Hello, Dana. How are you today?
Hi, Saba. I'm doing well, and yourself?
Very well. Thank you so much for participating to this initiative for international organizations within the context of the International Coaching Week, which is itself sponsored by the ICF and International Coaching Federation Switzerland. So thank you very much. We have lots of various events taking place, from pro bono coaching to webinars of all sorts and interviews. And I'm really fascinated by your topic, which is character strengths. And that's what we're going to explore with you today. Before we go ahead, I would invite you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
All right. So, a little bit about me is that I began my coaching journey about 12 years ago, following on a career in human resources working for multinational companies.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably something that I had known that eventually would come my way because I've always been really keen and interested about personal development topics. And one of the reasons I was drawn to coaching was that I wanted to further develop myself. And when I discovered how powerful a tool coaching is for myself, I was inspired to bring it to others. Other than that, maybe what I could say about myself is that I'm a self-directed continuous learner. I continue developing, discovering new topics. And I think that's also important because coaching is a lot about learning, self-discovery, and it's also about being open to change. And so this was something that I felt was really important for me to expand my skill set on. And in terms of maybe, since we're going to be talking about character strengths here in a little bit, I'll share a few of my top strengths, and then I'll close my introduction there. My top 5 signature strengths, or superpowers as we like to call them, include honesty, bravery, gratitude, hope, perseverance, and appreciation of beauty and excellence. And so these are character strengths that are near and dear to my heart. And I'll get to tell you a little bit more about character strengths later.
Thank you for that. Well, I do recognize these character strengths in you for having known you for so many years. One thing that I'd like to share with our viewers about you is that you're a multifaceted professional. You're a coach, but you're also a professor of leadership at the University of Applied Sciences in Western Switzerland, at the International Business Management faculty. So you're really also developing youth, developing the future through your teaching. And you've also participated in many activities and coaching together with me in international organizations. So that is an environment that you're very familiar with. And also you have a background as an HR leader in big multinational companies. So there all these various aspects make of you a very rich and interesting professional.
Thank you, Selva.
Dana is also offering pro bono coaching sessions during this event. So if you haven't booked a session with her yet, please go ahead and check our website. And she will also be giving a workshop, sort of an interactive talk workshop at the International Road Transport Union on Friday, 17 May, in person. So that's an in-person event, which will be very interesting and sort of a break from all the webinars that we're offering. So here we go. Let's start with character strengths. This is like such a misunderstood term, or rather there are different definitions of it. Sometimes people think of strengths as competencies and skills and things that you know how to do. Other times they might think of physical strengths and resilience and endurance. I'd like to ask you, what is your concept of strengths?
That's a fantastic question to ask, Saba. And indeed, we are people of multiple strengths. And that's something that I always try and impress upon people, is that we oftentimes forget the many different types of strengths that we have. So we have our talents that come naturally to us. That's a kind of strength, if you will. We have our passions and areas of interest that energize us, and that oftentimes we spend a lot of our quality time dedicated to those activities. We also have our personal values, which can be seen as strength as well. And then character strengths, as VIA intends them, the VIA Institute on Character. Character strengths are those core positive personality traits, of which there are 24. And these character traits, these personality traits, when we are living them, they produce positive outcomes for us as individuals, but also they contribute to the collective good. And so these 24 core personality traits are universal. Research was conducted by the VIA Institute on Character a little bit over 20 years ago now, time flies, to really study and understand around the world, across cultures, across religions, world philosophies, worldviews, across time to a certain extent as well. What is it that makes us the very best of who we are? What is deeply valued and appreciated about human beings? And they were able to identify these 24 character strengths or core personality traits, if you will.
So tell me, as a professional coach, how do you integrate this notion of character strengths in your work?
That's a wonderful question as well, because sometimes I find that people might discover character strengths or any other topic and then wonder, what do I do with that? That's very interesting. And yet, how am I going to apply it? And so in coaching, how I use character strengths is really as a resource for the coaching client to help them to be at their very best, which then allows them to do their very best, if you will, whether it be at work or in other areas, other important areas of their life. And so we'll use them, for example, when clients are first starting a coaching program and they would like to understand a little bit more about themselves, what they already have available to them in terms of resources. And we won't necessarily only look at character strengths. We might look at some competencies. Those can also be a type of strength, soft skills, for example. We might look at talents or personal values. We'll kind of make a whole palette, if you will, of strengths. So the person can call upon those at any time they wish throughout their coaching journey. Because as we know, coaching is about change. And as we embark on our coaching journey, we expect that at some point we're going to need to draw upon some resources to help us to do things differently, to be differently in terms of our attitudes and behaviors. And character strengths are one of those very powerful resources that can help to do that.
And tell me, Dana, I find, in society in general, people are not used to looking at their strengths. We've all been taught to be humble, and people who sort of show off are not much appreciated. And I find that often people don't even know their strengths or don't acknowledge them. So, when you do work with strengths and help people discover their strengths, what is the typical reaction?
It's a good point that you make. In addition to being humble, sometimes we just are victim of our negativity bias, where we tend to focus more on what is causing us a problem or a difficulty, what might be challenging for us, and overlook the good things, the positive things, what's going well and right. And so oftentimes what we'll do in coaching is I'll ask people, before we even talk about character strengths, I'll ask them to tell me a few stories, a few true stories, if you will, about times when they felt they were at their very best. So specific examples of something that they might be proud of or feel really good about that they've accomplished. And so as they tell those stories, I'm listening as the coach, paying careful attention, and I, knowing the character strengths, start to identify some possibilities, right? So that when we do get to the VIA survey, when they take the VIA survey, which is free, by the way, and available in over 40 languages, when they take the VIA survey and they see the results, I already have a few stories about them that they can look to identify, yes, in that moment, I was actually using my character strength of humility or honesty or kindness or leadership. And so that's how I ease people into it, because it's oftentimes not that easy to take a report and immediately identify with what you see in the report. It's easier if you can tie that back to some true stories about yourself.
That's really something. I think for people, it's quite a discovery to all of a sudden, be shown that they have such deep and profound character strengths. It makes me think also of how we work with teams. In companies, often feedback is given in quite a tough way, and we focus a lot on people's weaknesses in the hope of helping them develop. And, while of course it's true that we need to see where the gaps are, there's in general quite a strong focus on pointing out weaknesses, pointing out, mistakes and things like that. So it's everyone is trained to sort of grit their teeth in the face of any onslaught of criticism that may arrive. What is different about using character strengths in working with teams and in developing teams?
So the opportunity here is to adopt a language that's a positive language. So these 24 character strengths are universal. So they're universally appreciated, and we each have all 24, everyone on the planet. Afterwards, it's how do we use them, right? There's always the risk of underuse on the one hand or overuse on the other hand. So we're always trying to find that optimal use, that kind of balanced way of using our character strengths. So going back to your question, when we work with teams, what we want to do is to help everyone to see that everyone in the team has these 24 character strengths. You, as well as maybe some of the colleagues that you find more challenging to work with. And so when we come to that realization, we start to think, how am I viewing this person? And so we invite people to look at others through the lens of character strengths. Sometimes it's actually easier to look at others through the lens of character strengths than it is to look at oneself. As you mentioned before, sometimes we feel that we're not being humbled if we look at ourselves through the lens of character strengths. So it can be easier to practice on people that are close to you, that you appreciate or that you know quite well. And start to notice as well, wow, I see in that person curiosity. I never noticed that before. Yeah, maybe sometimes I am not as curious as that person. Interesting. Could that be somehow the source of some friction or tension that might appear sometimes in our relationships? And if so, how could we work better around that? Maybe could I dial mine up a little bit? Could I learn from that person? Could we have a conversation around curiosity, etc.? So it's really introducing a language that is a positive language that's accessible to everyone. And part of it's also encouraging people to give feedback also when things go well. And I think that's, when you talked about gritting your teeth when you're anticipating to receive some feedback, I can empathize with that because I've been there before as well inside of organizations that we're so focused on oftentimes performance, deadlines, deliverables, that sometimes in the rush to get to a point where we can improve something, we forget to tell people about what they're already doing or how they're already being that is good and well and right. And if we are more balanced in the way we talk to people about how they are and who they are and what they do, then it makes giving and receiving that feedback when there is something more critical that needs to be shared, or more constructive might be a better word, it makes that a little bit easier, right? Yeah. And actually it's fun. People, when they get into the habit of spotting the good in others, spotting their character strengths in action, they start to enjoy telling them, oh, I see you're using your fairness or you're using your forgiveness. Well done. I appreciate that in you. So it starts to create bonds between members in the team. And that's how I like to see this powerful, positive language as an opportunity to create bonds. Because while we're all unique, and we all will express our character strengths in different ways, character strengths are something that unite us.
That's really fascinating. And it sounds like it really opening the dialogue around people's character strengths really changes the dynamics between and the relationships in teams. And that's so important, especially nowadays that people are so overwhelmed, so stressed out, and having such little time to build relations or maintain relations at work. This is a really great way of opening a conversation around something that is positive for once. I was wondering if maybe you have some, like, really great anecdotes or examples that you would like to share with us from all your experience working with this incredible tool.
Maybe one thing that always makes me smile, and I'm always quick to share it with clients and also with students at the university, because we use these tools also in the leadership courses that I teach, is when I first saw my report. This is comical, and this is a common occurrence, I would say. So it's not just me. So we can have a good laugh on my expense here, but it actually happens quite often. The first thing I did when I got my report was to go all the way to the bottom and look to see what is the lowest strength in my list, because the VIA survey results, for those who might not have had the chance to do it yet, it's a rank order of your character strengths, all 24, from 1 down to 24. And well, it turns out that I'm not alone, that other people do this as well. And it's part of that fear of, oh, what might be my weakness? What came out lowest on my list? And so I like to tell that story because that's the reality that's a very human reaction, and we are human beings. So let's all keep that in mind when we receive our results for the first time. And what's good to know is that even your number 24 character strength is still a strength. It's not a weakness. It's what we call the part of the lesser strengths or the lower strengths. And those approximately 5 down at the bottom are the ones that we tend to use a little bit less often. Maybe we're less familiar with them, haven't had a chance to apply them, or maybe we didn't realize it was a strength. So the good news is that since I discovered that number 24 strength, I've made a concerted effort to make improvement on that strength. And I've had a lot of fun doing that. And so now I tend to ask people when we're having these conversations around character strengths, is there anybody in the room that's high on this character strength? Because I would need a little bit of inspiration on how I can do it better. And it's amazing what people will tell you. And so I find it really fun. So that's one anecdote. I'm sorry to center it all on me, but sometimes it's easier to laugh at oneself.
It is.
Yeah. And other cases, I can say that, for example, in leadership coaching, some leaders might never have looked at the how they do things, right? They've been promoted throughout their career based on the merits, based on their performance, based on what they delivered, more about the what they were doing, and less maybe about the how they were doing it. And so in some interactions with leaders around their character strengths, sometimes it's been really a game changer, an eye opener, a softening, if you will, of their perception of themselves, and a realization that they are just as powerful, they are just as inspiring, or even more so, when they are actually bringing these character strengths to life. It makes them even more human. It makes them even more able to connect with others. And what is leadership all about at the end of the day? Leaders are there to guide people in a direction, to make things happen, and to help them really buy into it. Tap into people's aspirations and their values and their character strengths, and get them excited about being part of whatever the organization needs to achieve. So I've had some really interesting experiences with leaders who've told me, thank you for this opportunity to see myself in a different light, not only through the lens of my hard skills and soft skills, which are also very important, but also more about my personality. So
That's really wonderful, this work that you do, because I'm a leadership coach, and I've had a lot of executives that been supporting, and over the years. And really, I must say that every single one of these people are good people. They want to make things better in their organization. They have vocation, they have a vision, etc. And they also have a lot of work and a lot of stress. So being able to bring this more humane dimension, at least to have that conversation with them, as you do, and show them their strengths and talk about how they can express also their personality, and all the good things that they want to do for their organization and also for themselves or for legacy. I think it's a really, really valuable and easy to implement approach. From what I understand, there's a questionnaire that people can complete, and it's easily accessible. There's a free version, right? And
Absolutely.
yeah, and you can work with that and sort of validate and reinforce the already existing good characteristics that people, that leaders have within themselves and maybe don't recognize.
And if they don't recognize them in themselves, Saba, it makes it really hard for them to recognize them in others. So
Right.
that's also part of it. So oftentimes, as you mentioned, leaders really want to help their team members and colleagues to really be their best. And sometimes they struggle to figure out, how can I best serve the people in my team? And if you, as a leader, are aware of your character strengths, you become aware then of others' character strengths, and you know how to help people to use those strengths at work. So maybe one key point I would mention here is that research has shown that when we can use our signature strengths, so those top 5 on average, at work, day to day, we feel more fulfilled at work. Our work has more meaning. And when that happens, we're more likely to want to stay in that organization, to engage, and to make a contribution. So I think any leader out there who's listening to this, and any employee out there who's listening to this, that's something that I think everyone should know about, because we spend a lot of time at work. Let's make the time we spend at work an experience where we can really bring our best self to whatever it is that we're doing. And maybe you mentioned it earlier, I would say that a lot of people tell me, I didn't know I had any strengths. And wow. And a lot of times in this work where I am faced with that. And there's also a sense of relief when they see that it's a scientifically validated tool. They've done the research, right? There's actually over 1,000 studies, research studies on character strengths now. And a lot of that research is available via Institute on Character website for anyone who would be curious and want to do a little reading on those topics. So we're working to give people awareness, raise awareness with people about the strengths that they have. And there's so many people out there who don't realize that they actually do have strengths.
I think it's very reassuring also that this is, based on research, that there have been many, many studies, and it's validated, and it's not something that just popped up yesterday. It's been around for a while, and there are many renowned scholars that are working on it. There's one thing that, because I'm sure a lot of people that are watching us now are also parents. And I was wondering, you work with youth, with young people at the university, you're a professor, so you bring the, strength focus approach with you. And how does this impact young people, this approach at looking at their strengths and supporting them, their strengths and developing their strengths? What is the impact on them?
I think from conversations I've had with students, knowing that you have strengths is a confidence booster, right? So in my course, we're not teaching about confidence, self-confidence. However, I have students come and tell me, I feel more confident about my ability to perform. Think about it, as you well know, in the university, students are delivering presentations. Sometimes they're standing there all on their own in front of a group presenting. Sometimes it's a collective effort. That requires one to feel somehow good and well at their core to be able to do that with some ease. And so knowing that they have these strengths and knowing how these strengths are valued, and actually we have conversations about them in class. So it's not just me talking about them, it's peer-to-peer students talking with each other about the strengths that they observe in each other. Now, that's really valuable as well, because as we know, we oftentimes prefer to hear from someone who's close to us, our friends and peers, rather than from our hierarchy. So you hear it from a friend who says, I appreciate you, Saba, for your zest. You bring so much optimism to everything you do, right? That gives students a boost in confidence. And there's also research that shows that in terms of wanting to make a contribution towards resilience, this ability, if you will, as they say colloquially, to bounce back after some adversity. That could be adversity for a student, could be an exam or a project that didn't go so well, or a difficult relationship with a classmate. So having that ability to look at your character strengths every day or every week and see, I have all 24 of these. These are my top 5. This is part of who I am, strengths priming, if you will, enables students to, before an adverse situation arises, to already be boosted and more confident, more able, if you will, to deal with that adverse situation. And that's one topic that has come up is resilience. Students have told me, we wish we had training on resilience. And I say, I wish I had had some training at your age on resilience as well. So, I hear them, I understand. And character strengths, there's research that demonstrates that character strengths, when you are aware of them, when you're priming for them, when you're looking for them, so spotting them in yourself and others, these are all activities that boost your ability to deal with and bounce back from adverse situations.
That's wonderful for young people to be able to develop more self-confidence and resilience already at a young age. I'm wondering, what would you recommend to people that are in the workplace and overstressed out and would really not know how to start talking about strengths around themselves? What is the first tiny step that they can do without becoming a coach like you are or a professor? What can they do already to sort of embark on this path of focusing on strengths?
So one of my favorite questions comes from Ryan Nemick, who formerly his title was Education Director at VIA Institute on Character. Now he has he's been promoted, if you will, as the organization has grown. I believe his new title is Chief of Science and Learning. And the question that he introduced to us in my early days in training with the VIA Institute on Character is, what went well? 3 words that anyone can ask anywhere in life, not only at work, but also outside of work, since a lot of our life takes place outside of work as well. So in our conversations, if we ask people when we meet them, instead of saying, how was your day? Which we know most people will say, what, Saba? They'll say, yeah, it's okay, whatever. It was raining, or I was stuck in traffic. Or if we say, what went well? Then people look for, most of the time people want to answer your question. They'll look, they haven't heard that question before, maybe they'll look for it. And so that's already a practice which puts us in a more appreciative mindset. When we ask that question, it's because we expect that, and we imagine that something has gone well, and it doesn't matter the size of what went well. You could have had a terrible day, but someone on the street, when you dropped your bag, reached over and helped you to pick up your briefcase, your groceries, whatever it might have been. If you share that what went well moment, that story there is already a spark of hope, and hope is, again, a character strength. There's many character strengths in that act of what went well. So even if you don't become trained as a coach or trained on character strengths, if you start to ask that question, what went well, and then you look in that story that the person will tell you to see, what are those positive personality traits that we can see there? So maybe in that case of dropping your bag and someone coming to help, it may be kindness. It may be social intelligence, because that person may be empathizing. That happened to me one time, and it was so nerve-wracking and embarrassing on the street when all my things fell. Or it might be, who knows what it might be, hope, or maybe they were inspired by something else that's not coming to me right now. There's so many character strengths that it could be leadership or teamwork. Maybe it was a colleague and they wanted to give a hand. Who knows why or how? But when you use that question, what went well, you're moving in the direction of strengths, of something more positive about us human beings.
Thank you. That's such a perfect tip, and that is applicable in all aspects of life. Even when we, think within ourselves, when we're at the end of the day, if we ask ourselves that question rather than focusing on what went wrong and, grumbling about this and this colleague or things that didn't go the way we wanted. So this what went well approach is extremely powerful and extremely useful. And everyone can apply it in all parts of life. I think what I hear in everything that you're saying is really that this it makes me realize that this whole coaching approach, of course, coaching is much more than just having a coaching tool or asking questions. It's a whole attitude, it's a whole mindset, including an appreciative approach and looking at strengths and social intelligence and so on. And all of this really supports a more humanistic way of interacting with each other. And I also find that sometimes people resist this because it's safer to look at, what possible dangers could be around, it's safer to turn on your negativity bias to see what could possibly go wrong. But I think the power of a positive outlook grounded on things like character strength, which is very, very concrete. There's a questionnaire and then your strengths come out and you discuss those together with a coach or with your group. I think that is so powerful and so useful nowadays. And I just wish more people would know about it. I'm so glad you've agreed to have this conversation so that we can, disseminate this video and your wonderful, brilliant ideas to, as many people as possible. One thing that comes to mind is if somebody wanted to learn how to use character strengths as a team leader, what would they have to do?
So I think there's many paths to get there as a team leader. You could work with a coach, although maybe not everyone has that opportunity or that desire either. You could do some self-study. So you could take the VIA survey on your own. As mentioned, it's free access available on the VIA Institute on Character website, viacharacter.org. After that, there's plenty of reading material. So VIA really wants to provide access to character strengths literature, research, articles. So there's a plethora of information available for free on the website. That's another option. There are books that have been written by various people at VIA, for example, Ryan Nemec, that one could read and understand a little bit better. So I would always, and this is my approach, but other people might do it a little bit differently. So there's not a one size fits all here, but I tend to practice things on myself first. And then when I feel like, yeah, I think I get it, then I try and bring it to others. And that's, as I said earlier, that's, I got started with coaching because I've always been, keen on personal development. And I thought I'll give coaching a try and I'll see how it works for me. And I was so convinced that I said, I want to bring this to other people. So that tends to be my approach. You could also do it as a family or as a team. You could just say, we're going to dedicate a couple of hours to getting to know this topic of character strengths together. And that could be a fun conversation. I know when I was going through character strengths training, I did some briefings with my family. So I got 3 or 4 family members together and helped them to discover their character strengths profiles. And we had conversations around that and how they could use it. Very informal. I was more there as the family member and not as a practitioner of character strengths. So I think there's a multitude of ways to go about it. Look at the free literature, take the VIA survey, purchase, if you wish, a book or 2 and read about them, have conversations with people, maybe work with a coach, many different ways to go about it. But what would be most important, I think, is apply it, work with it. We could have a tendency to think it's a free survey, it can't be of much value, of much worth. And that would be really unfortunate, because the reason it's free is that VIA wants to make it available to a maximum number of people.
Right.
And of course, they also look at the raw data to get better understanding about which strengths are trending higher or lower, or demographic, which, etc., this type of thing. But really the intention is to eradicate, if you will, strengths blindness and equip people to be strengths aware.
Yeah. Mm. Wow, it's a big gift that they offer to the world. And, you know, especially nowadays when there's so much tension going around, and where we look a lot about differences, you know, differences with such group of people or the other group of people. And I found very interesting what you said, and you repeated it, is that this is based on universal values across the world. So everybody in the world can experience this value or this character strength around love or friendship or resilience, etc. What more can you tell us about this sort of universality and this universal dimension of the character strengths?
Well, I find it fascinating. To me, it's, on the one hand, it's something that unites us all, that we have in common. On the other hand, we're all going to express our character strengths differently, because we're all made up of different combinations. And so there's so many different degrees and variations and nuances. And then there's the context, obviously. So in some cases, we may tend to dial up one particular character strength, but in another situation, we may be dialing that one down. So I find it really fascinating. So on the one hand, it's what differentiates us from others. And on the other hand, it's what unites us. And the more conversations I have, when you look at the population here in Geneva, it's a highly diverse population. We have people living and working here who come from all over the world. I think maybe 45% of the population in the Geneva canton is not actually born in Geneva, or maybe not even in Switzerland for that matter. So in all these different conversations I'm having with students and leaders and employees and organizations, I'm starting to see that even if people come from a different background, when we talk about these strengths, we understand each other. As you were pointing out, we understand what love looks like. We understand what kindness looks like. We understand what gratitude looks like. We understand what humor looks like, right? So our way of expressing those character strengths, and actually humor is a really interesting one. It helps people to connect quickly, this character strength of humor. It brings a smile to people's face as well, and helps us to connect emotionally. But that's what I found particularly fascinating. And I do underscore that with my students in the leadership program, is that as they go out into the world and they move into organizations and they take on positions of responsibility, why don't you look at the composition of your team and give value to the diversity, the richness,
Right.
of each individual and what they bring. And an entry point into that could just be doing this character strength survey, having everyone on the team do it and have a discussion about, your top 5 and how do you bring those to life. It's an entry point into appreciating the richness of the diversity that is present in your organization, in your team, here in society as well.
You know, it's what you say is very relevant, because our audience here, well, I hope a whole lot of people see it, that specifically within the context of this event, our audience are organizations that have, employees from all over the world and representatives from all over the world. And so, really highlighting the fact that these character strengths are universal, I think is a very interesting information, so that, this can be embraced more easily by anyone from wherever they are. I think also what is interesting is the fact that, people who work in international organizations, whether they're, at headquarters in Geneva or maybe in the field and so on, these are people that are invested in one way or another, directly or indirectly, in trying to make the world a better place. And so this might sound like hyperbole, etc., but that's actually it. That's their job. And so when you bear that in mind, that we're talking to people who in a certain sense have a mission or a mandate, what would you say to them? What would be your message as a specialist of character strengths to this population, this audience?
Bringing your character strengths with you, they're already with you, but intentionally bringing them with you to work every day can really have an impact on your sense of meaning and purpose. And when you're in the mode of applying your character strengths, again, in a balanced way, so we're not talking about overuse, which can be problematic, or underuse, which can also be problematic, but in a balanced way, what's happening inside of us is that we're experiencing positive emotions as we express these character strengths. We're feeling a sense of authenticity, of being true to who we are. We're also feeling that we're making a contribution to others. And that's a huge part of living life on purpose, of working to achieve something meaningful, right? And so that when that's happening inside of us, we're feeling a host of more pleasant, more positive emotions. And when we do that, science has shown, Barbara Friedrichsen has talked about this quite at length, what positive emotions do to our minds. They literally open them up. And that makes us better able to learn, better able to acquire new resources, better able to reach out and connect with people we don't know yet, or to solidify relationships that we already have. That allows us also to be more innovative and creative. And so that helps us then to deliver on that mission that is so dear to us, make that purpose, make that meaning, be part of even bigger part of what we do every day and make us more successful. So all of these character strengths, research has shown, are pathways to what's known as the PERMA framework. PERMA stands for, positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So any of these character strengths that you choose to intentionally apply in a balanced way is a pathway to helping you experience any of those 5 pillars of that framework, of which one is meaning. So people who are out there purpose-driven, who have a strong sense of meaning, our desire to have that, and desire to do something good for the world, to make the world a better place, a brighter place, I would say character strengths are going to be one of those pathways to help you to do that.
Thank you. That's really very inspiring, Dana. Thank you very much. And also, I think that, talking about character strengths and having sort of this value-driven conversation around deeper purposes also of people's life and their work and their mission, it also creates positive emotions. When you're talking about people's strengths, it generates some sort of a positive feeling. And, I think in positive psychology, cited the PERMA model, that one of the key elements of a life well lived is also experiencing positive emotions. It's very important for our psychological and physical health to, on a daily basis, to at least experience positive emotion at some point or another. And I think that bringing in the character strengths is something that feeds into this kind of positive and supportive and appreciative feeling that people can experience on a daily basis. And also, I think what's really important about this work that you're doing is that people actually perform better when they are experiencing positive emotions, rather than stress. Stressed out people are not working at the peak of their cognitive capabilities. So I think this is also a great contributor to performance. A lot of people want to see the bottom line. So how does it affect performance? Well, it does. It actually affects performance positively. What is how far is this disseminated? How many people know about via character strengths? Tell me more about that.
Well, the good news is more and more people are becoming aware of the character strengths, and VA is working really hard to get the information out there. They're growing as well as an organization, and We have now there's a VIA faculty team that's expanded. And so I've been able to join that team. So it's really it really shows that VIA has this intention of helping people gain access to this information more readily. 30 million, over 30 million people around the world have taken the survey in every country on the planet. I believe it's available in 40 plus languages. There's also a youth version, which probably I don't actually work with people under 17 years old. That youth version is for up to age 17. And I'm guessing it's probably for young people between like 13, 14, and 17, if you will. So the reach is expanding. And then in organizations, people like me who are practitioners, we're trying our very best to bring it into the workplace. And it's a part of every conversation that I have. Every time an organization contacts me and say, could you organize a team building for us? Or could you do a leadership coaching program for us? Whatever it may be. And they want to brainstorm a little bit. What could it look like? What are your goals and how could we help you to accomplish them, etc. I always propose, consider VIA character strengths. Now, whether they choose VIA character strengths or not in the end as the tool, at least that's a little bit of progress in terms of raising awareness, because sometimes people will say, I've never heard of them before. And I'll say, oh, if you want to have a look, if you want to do your survey next time we meet, tell me what your top 5 are. We can have a little chat about that. So I think it's growing in terms of reach, in part because it's easily accessible and it's something that you can easily talk about, right? So you can have conversations without being an expert on the tool. You can find something that went well that we can use as a little story to do some strength spotting, which is one of my favorite activities, to find something that we can appreciate in your story that ties back to your character strengths. So I'm optimistic, as you can tell, about the future for strengths. That's probably, I wouldn't be working with character strengths if I didn't believe in them as much as I do. But I wanted to also say, because you were talking about leaders, I always talk with leaders about what is the emotional vibe that you want to bring to the workplace, right? So I tell leaders, and even employees can do this as well, be intentional in the morning when you get up, when you get ready to go out there and meet the world, meet your colleagues, meet your clients. Ask yourself first, what is the emotional tone I want to set today for myself and for the others around us? Because as we know, emotions are contagious, right? So whatever we are feeling on the inside, we're going to be somehow transmitting to others around us. Leaders have a particular responsibility for setting the tone because they're most visible and have most authority typically. So leaders and employees, I would say, look at your character strengths as a way to help you to set the tone. Maybe there's one particular character strength that you want to be intentional about today. If you set your attention on any of the 24, that's going to put you into that emotional energy that's going to be what we might call more pleasant, or you can call it more positive. And that's going to have a spillover effect. You're going to spread that around, if you will, to others. And as you were talking about, when our minds are more open, when we're feeling more positive emotions, it's easier for us to perform better. It's easier for us to maintain our relationships, which are so critical to performing work today. Most everyone interacts with someone to do their work. Helps us to learn and retain information. Yeah. So I tell my students as well in the classroom, I want you to be as comfortable as you can so that you can learn and remember what we're talking about today. So let's set the tone together to make this an environment that you want to be in. And so that's really, I think character strengths helps leaders and employees and students and their teachers to set that emotional tone. Because if I know going into my day-to-day that gratitude is the strength I want to focus on, or maybe it is, let me pick one that I haven't said before, appreciation of beauty and excellence. I want to be admiring all the amazing wonders in this world, from the tiny little maybe insect that lands on my plate at lunchtime to the beautiful 100-year-old oak tree that's on the campus or wherever I might be, right? So whatever you want to put your attention to of these 24 character strengths, it's going to be associated with positive emotion. And that's such a powerful thing to spread. You don't know how that might make a difference in someone's life who's trying to make a difference in other people's lives. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Well, if you were to ask me what went well in this interview, I would say that you've really transmitted the spirit of character strengths and the deeper purpose of this work that you're doing, which is really to help people improve the quality of their personal life, but in particular in this context, their work life, life in their organizations. And I think this is very, very useful information. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you really want to express or tell us?
One thing, and I'll be quick on this one, but I think I've mentioned it every now and then. I say balanced use, balanced use, balanced use. And I mention that because I have had people in workshops tell me, I really don't see that that could be a character strength. It just doesn't work out for me when I try that one. And after conversations and peer discussions and people sharing their different experiences, sometimes we find that maybe that character strength was overused, or maybe it didn't have the support of other character strengths. So as with anything in life, same thing with our competencies, our talents, anything, find that right balance for that moment. And keep in mind that sometimes it might be important to bring in a few other character strengths. Typically, our character strengths work in combos or constellations. They don't go around just by themselves. So I would say pay attention to those moments where you feel something's not quite right, and see, is there a way that maybe what could I do to balance a little bit better my use of strengths? So if you look at curiosity, I'll give you one quick example.
Yeah, can you give us an example of
Yeah,
balancing 2 or 3 strengths? I like that.
Yeah, well, if you look at curiosity, for example, when curiosity is, let's say, balanced, it allows you to acquire new information, right? So you're learning things, maybe you're reaching out to people to ask questions. And when it goes a little bit too far, it can be intrusive or nosy, right? So if we're digging too deep with our questions, or pushing a little bit too far, it can become too much and cause us some challenges, right? So maybe if we use social intelligence with our curiosity, it helps us to find what's the right, how many questions should I ask? How deep can I go with my curiosity before it becomes intrusive? So that's maybe an example of pairing up curiosity with social intelligence. Then on the underused side of curiosity, if you are not using any curiosity, you can imagine we're having this conversation today, Saba, and I'm not curious at all about what you're asking me, and I don't respond to any of your questions. How would that be?
That would be terrible.
That would be terrible. So every time you ask me a question, I'm being curious and I'm thinking, wow, what example could I give? Or how could I explain that in a short time period, obviously? So we might give the impression that we're bored, or we're disinterested, or we don't care. And maybe that's not what we wanted to give as the impression, right? So in that case, I don't know what I would call up, but so maybe if I'm not feeling too interested in the topic, I might use social intelligence again to be interested in the person, or I might use teamwork to help me boost my curiosity, to say, I'm here in a team with Saba in this conversation. So how can I be a good partner to her in this question that she's asking of me? How can I answer it in a way that's helpful? So in those instances where, for one reason or another, we're a little bit low or a little bit overboard with a character strength, and we want to dial it down or dial it up, find another 1 or 2 character strengths that can give you a hand. And the tip here would be our top 5 signature strengths are going to be some of the best supporters that we have in these types of endeavors. But don't forget, you also have the lesser strengths, that even if you don't use them very often. So I'm going to just tell you, very bottom of my list, I have, for example, curiosity, I think is number 17. No, that's the wrong list. Hold on just a second. It is creativity is number 24. That doesn't mean I can't be creative, right? So in some instances, I need to bring creativity in, and then I can use humor to help me with creativity, right? To have some fun with it. And then I can get inspiration from other people. So I can use some social intelligence to boost my creativity. So look at these as a toolbox, if you will, and mix and match, or maybe a palette of colors. Mix and match the colors to paint the image that you need to help you in whatever situation it might be. So have some fun with it. Zest, apply some zest, sprinkle some zest on top. That's another character strength. So there you go.
Thank you, Dana. Yeah, so that's such a nuanced approach. I think people will really understand very well now that you've given these examples of how it can actually play out in their lives. It's very, very helpful. And so as we reach the end of our conversation, I would like to thank you so much for all the insights and your wonderful, warm way of presenting all this information and helping us discover what the VIA character strengths are all about. I would encourage everyone to go and look at the VIA character strengths website. You'll be able to find the survey, which you can do free, and there's a lot of information around the character strengths, including what the 24 character strengths are. You'll get the whole list. I also want to encourage you to check out Dana's work, Dana Walden. You'll find her on internet, you'll find her on LinkedIn. She does extraordinary work in different domains, apart from being a business owner and a professor and a leadership coach and a specialist in character strengths, emotional intelligence, and positive psychology, I think. I've summed it up briefly, but discover more about her on internet. You can find her easily. Just Google Dana and you'll find out about her. This is an event that is being recorded for the International Coaching Week. The name of this event is Coaching for International Workers and Organizations. It's part of a pro bono campaign that includes webinars, pro bono coaching, interviews, etc., etc. So I hope you enjoyed this very much. And I would like to give Dana the last word. Oh, maybe I should say who I am.
Maybe you should, Saba.
Maybe I should say who I am. So I'm Saba Imre Mathieu, and I'm the lead on this project for international organizations. I was myself a former international civil servant at the ITU in Geneva. I'm also a business owner. I'm an executive coach and various other things. Find out about me on our website and Google me, Saba Imru, and you'll learn everything about me. I really enjoyed this session, and I'll give Dana the last word.
Thank you so much, Saba. I would say that I didn't know what I was embarking on in terms of a journey with character strengths when I first got started in 2017. But it has been a delight day to day in my life, whether it's at work or with my family or friends. And I wholeheartedly encourage everyone out there to take the opportunity to discover what makes you the best of who you are, and also how you can make your best contribution to a greater good. So those would be my closing words, and I express a lot of gratitude to you, Saba, for hosting me, and to the International Coaching Federation for holding this International Coaching Week on an annual basis and making this type of event and coaching available to the public. Thank you, Saba.
Thank you, Dana. So don't forget to look for us on our website, on the International Coaching Federation Switzerland website, and see all the other material that is available for you. Thank you, Dana. Goodbye, our dear viewers, and see you in the next event. Bye-bye.